This is Kacey Kasem back with another episode of Get Real. And yes, this is another one of those lost episodes. Those episodes that I thought were gone forever, but magically made their way back into our hearts. And this one's a great one. I sat down with Katie Flower. You guys know her as the Diva of Devy, and you can find her on Twitter at FF_Skylar399. We chatted it up about all kinds of stuff. We talked about what to look for in players when it comes to Devy. Also about her love for the Arkansas Razorbacks. We talked about her cooking and her gardening, about how she's an excellent teacher to everybody she comes across, and a ton more. I had a blast talking with Katie. I've known her for a while. We've met up, we've hung out, and she's just a real chill chick. You guys really should be following her if you're not already. So again, follow her on Twitter at FF_Skylar399. She's a co-host of the UTH Under the Helmet podcast, as well as Off the Rails podcast. She is the Diva of Devy, as stated earlier. She's all around awesome human being, so you should definitely check her out. As always, you can find me on Twitter at DKCKasem, and you can also find the podcast on Twitter at GetReal_pod. This podcast is a proud member of the DAP Network, Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. Go check out all of those podcasts as well because they're all super rad. Also, you can find my writing over with the Fantasy Footballers. I just dropped a new article, and there will be more to come soon. The episode that you are about to listen to, like I said, was one of those episodes that was recorded a while back. So we reference stuff like the Combine and all that jazz. And, just take that with knowing that it was December when we recorded this, and you'll feel a lot better about yourself. Anyway, I want to present to you my conversation with Katie Flower.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Good.
How you doing?
I'm all right. Busy week, even though it shouldn't be. So,
yeah.
I
took a few days off. I had some vacation days left, and then I've got tomorrow and Friday off normally.
Cool. Yeah, I got to work tomorrow, but we get off an hour early.
Awesome. Well, that's better than nothing, right?
Yeah. Well, we work through lunch, so that's why we're getting off an hour early.
Yeah. So you're still working. You're still working
like 8 hours. They're going to get the 8 hours out of me one way or the other.
That's cool.
Well, you said you know the drill when it comes to this cool time. So we'll just dive straight on in because people want to hear what you got to say. All right, Katie. So first and foremost, question that everybody gets asked is when and why did you start playing fantasy football?
I've got a backstory to the story.
Okay.
So for 10 years, I participated in a charity event in Florida for Give the Kids the World, and it was called Hearts of Reality. I'm a big Survivor fan. I love reality TV. My favorite reality TV, of course, is football and sports. But outside of that, I love Survivor. I love Amazing Race. I love Big Brother. And so for 10 years, I would attend this charity event in Florida, play golf with the guy that organizes the whole thing. I was one of the volunteers that would pick people up at the airport, give them a ride to the hotel, kind of hang out at events during the autographs and make sure everybody had water and that kind of stuff. And in trade-off, I got to go to all the private parties and hang out with the people that were on Survivor. And I've gotten to meet and party with over 100 of them. And in 2012, shortly after the event ended, because it's usually in July or August, the guy that organizes the event reached out to me and he goes, "Look, I know you like sports, but have you ever played fantasy football? I've got one opening in a 12-team league, and we're drafting this weekend. I need one more person, and it's a bunch of the Hearts of Reality people." And I was like, "You mean not only do I get to hang out with survivors, but now I get to play them in fantasy football?" It's like, yeah, I'll do it. I'd never done it before. It was redraft, and it was going to be on, I think it was NFL.com, which is a pretty good format. So I read a few articles from Matthew Berry on ESPN, his draft day manifesto, and that was the year after Matt Stafford had a really big year. So he was high on Matt Stafford. He's like, you got to get Matt Stafford, get a quarterback early. And all the things that now it's like, I'm just the opposite of. Right, exactly. But so in the very first draft, I had 3 days to prep for it. I had all my cheat sheets and everything, and it was an online, quick 1.5 minute, 2 minute per person. And I drafted the worst team in the league. And part of that was drafting Matt Stafford in the first round. and anyway, I struggled. I had Jamal Charles. This was back when he was still a thing, but he had been injured. I had Steven Jackson, the guy from Atlanta, Frank Gore, back before Frank Gore started to slow down. I mean, who doesn't have Frank Gore now, right?
Yeah, right.
But it was just awful. I think I ended up winning only one game, obviously didn't make the playoffs. And I hated the frustration of not knowing what I was doing. And I liked it enough in the off season. I did a lot of mock drafts. I started looking into how to formulate my own opinions, how to create a team, and listening to different voices now that I had time. But I found that the drafting was really fun. I love mock drafting, and ESPN lets you have like 10 or 15 teams for free before you had to sign a subscription or something. So I would max out. This next year, I maxed out how many redraft leagues that I was in. They were all free. Why not?
Yeah.
And I started to learn how to win. And then in 2014 is when I first found out about Dynasty. And I was in a mock draft. No, actually, this was a real draft room. And you know how ESPN at the bottom has the chat, and you can chat with the people to kill a little bit of time. So I'm in that draft, and it was in June, which is still pretty early for redraft. And I saw this guy talking to another guy, and he was talking about having an orphan spot. He's commissioner of a dynasty league, and he was trying to get this other guy interested in taking over as owner for one of the orphans. He goes, I've got 2 orphans, and it piqued my interest. So I watched their conversation, and then I started chiming in, and I was like, well, you've got 2 spots. I'd be interested in the second one. I'll even let the other guy take his choice since you asked him first. He can look at the teams and take whoever he wants. And so we both got a team. I ended up becoming really good friends with the guy, not the commissioner, but the other guy that he invited to Dynasty. And to this day, we're still co-owners of a team on MFL together. I've met him when I went to the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. He lives in Alabama, not too far. So I got to see him in person and meet him, which has been one of the best things about fantasy football, is meeting all the people. But that's how I got into it, and that's how I got into Dynasty. So 2012 for redraft, and then in 2014 I started in Dynasty, which has taken over. I do very, very few redraft leagues and a lot of Dynasty leagues.
No, I get that totally. That's how it is usually. And it's crazy to think of you as being in that many redraft leagues because we know you're not like that now.
No, I'm in 2, maybe 3 redraft leagues now per season, and 32 or so. Some of them are best ball, so I don't really count them. Even though they're Dynasty, if they're best ball, you don't have to set a lineup. There's no work to be done, really, just trading and waiver wire and things like that. But 32 leagues, and I always look to add 1 or 2 in the off season just to stay in touch with the ADP and everything.
Wow, first person I've heard say they're adding more, so that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I really love Devy, the college players, and so I do try to get into 1 or more of those, again, just to stay in touch with the actual drafting and where they're going. Because if I'm going to be on a Dynasty podcast and talking about player values, I want to know where they're being valued at. And, just looking at websites and things like that, that doesn't cut it. Being in a draft, that's where everything the rubber hits the road. And then you really know a true player's value, or trading with somebody. That's when you really know the true player's value.
For sure. Yes. So you brought up Devy, and I mean, that's your baby, your trademark. What got you into Devy, and why do you find it to be so appealing?
I coached youth sports for 14 years. I coached baseball, basketball, and football. So I have a pretty good eye for talent. And I like Dynasty because of the rookie drafts and prepping for the rookie drafts. I watch a lot of college football just because I'm an Arkansas Razorback fan. I love the SEC. I love watching Georgia. I got a buddy of mine who loves the Georgia Bulldogs. So I always watch them with him, and then he watches the Razorbacks with me. So that's a lot of fun. I watch college football naturally. But what got me into Devy, it was my second year in Dynasty, 2015, early before the season even started. And again, just being on the message boards, I heard about a Devy League. I said, what is that? And it's developmental. It means that you draft college players while they're still in college. If they make it into the pros, they're on your team automatically. And I'm like, holy cow, that's an even deeper dive. And yes, it's risky, but if you've got a pretty good eye for talent, and I felt like I had a pretty good eye for talent, it can give you a real advantage over your league mates. And especially if they are risk averse and they don't even want to draft a Devy player, they basically give their picks away for almost nothing as a throw in because they want to get XYZ pro that's already in the NFL. So there's ways to exploit it from both sides of the picture. And I've seen it exploited from both sides. And I've seen some very good managers that don't ever draft Devy. I happen to really like drafting the players while they're still in college. And it's a lot of fun. It's fun to track them and trace them. It also makes watching on Saturday and Thursday nights even more important and even more fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. I don't watch college football, but you might be swaying me that way with all this talk. So speaking of college football too, did you watch college football before the NFL, or were you a fan of both at the same time, or did one come, NFL before?
My whole life, I've been the weird one in my family. I'm in a family of 6 kids, 2 brothers, 3 sisters. My mom and dad both work 40 to 60 hours a week. I grew up in a very small town in Vermont, and we had a TV set with 2 channels. It was always black and white TV with the static. We had to put aluminum foil on the rabbit ears just to try to get decent reception. That was back way before remote controls, when you had to get up to change the channel to the only other choice. So there wasn't a whole lot of watching sports when I was a kid. My family did not really like sports. My dad at least liked baseball, and every now and again he would pile us in the station wagon and drive down to Boston, about 4.5-hour drive for us, and we'd go see the Red Sox play. And that was always such a treat, one time a year if we were lucky. But I had a bunch of boys in the neighborhood that loved to play sports. I would go down to my neighbor's house and shoot hoops with them till it got dark, time to go home for dinner. Or we'd be playing football in the sandlot after school. I was always the quarterback. I had a pretty good arm. I'd play sandlot baseball with the boys, hockey in the wintertime. I mean, every sport there was, I was into. And I didn't really get to watch much pro or college until I got to college myself. And once I became an adult, and now I've got cable and I've got the opportunity to watch whatever I want, then I started watching both avidly, and going to live games as much as I could.
Going to live games, I'm sure that's like a great experience, especially to get immersed in that culture that's going on there. And you're from Texas, so
I'm from Vermont.
I know you're from Vermont. Yeah, you're in Texas. That's what I meant to say. Yeah. But you got here as fast as you could. And do you pay attention to high school football, or have you seen any high school football? I know it's
a little bit, and mainly because I've got friends that have school-age kids, right. And so I'll go watch a soccer game or a football game or something. Every now and again, like I may catch a game on TV, but I haven't just picked up and gone to like Frisco versus whoever, just because I know that Frisco's got a good team generally and things like that. But I've got such a busy life most of the time that I just don't have time to go do that unless I've got a friend that's got a kid on the team.
And the kid's not General Booty, is it?
No.
Do you like that name?
Yeah.
I just brought it up because my supervisor's kid plays varsity football for Allen, which is a big thing.
Yeah,
So,
they're a big program too.
Yeah. So, anyway, back to talking about a topic that's near and dear to your heart, the college football aspect of everything. When you started playing Devy, how did you feel when you first jumped into doing Devy as well? I know that you were relatively new to Dynasty when you jumped into that. So what were your feelings going into it?
Well, what I liked about Devy was there wasn't a lot of information out there at that time.
Right.
And so again, by watching a lot of college football, that would give me a bit of an advantage over my league mates who only followed certain sites. Like DLF had some Devy back then. Nick Whalen, the Devy Report, which fantastic document. And since then, there's been a lot more on the Devy front. There's a lot of sites that are now devoted to Devy. And so there's a lot of competition, but there's a lot of varying opinions. And to me, Devy is like the Wild West. You can have an opinion on a player, but you're not going to know you're right for 3 or 4 years sometimes, and maybe even longer, even after the NFL Combine, even after the NFL Draft. Sometimes it may take a player 3 or 4 years in the NFL before they really start to become a stud. And by then, a lot of players, a lot of dynasty owners have given up on them. I've noticed, and I noticed from very early on, that dynasty owners are impatient a lot of times when they shouldn't be, and they hang on a lot of times to players when they shouldn't be. So there's really never that happy medium. Oh, I sold that guy at the perfect time. I made the most perfect time trade. You don't hear that a lot. And so it's the same thing with Devy. It's like, it's so easy to give up on a guy because he has an injury in college, or maybe he gets busted for marijuana. And so now it's like, well, he's probably never going to make it. And there's always guys that fall through the cracks, even in the deepest of Devy leagues. So that was always fun. The rookie drafts weren't just always depleted. You couldn't just abandon the rookie draft and say, well, there's not going to be any talent left. There's always somebody.
I want to know also, when you're watching college football, what are you looking for when you're looking at the players that are out there in terms of who you want to keep an eye on for Devy? Because sometimes it doesn't translate over to the NFL. College doesn't translate. So what are the things that you look for in players?
Right. So with running backs, I'm looking to see how they execute. Do they always try to bounce it outside, or do they, hard-nosed up the middle, keep those legs churning, trying to get that extra yard? Or are they the kind that try to bounce it out every opportunity, even though there's a hole, even though that's where the play was going, and they just always try to bounce it out? I'm looking at running backs. Are they getting what's blocked for them and that's it? Or are they creating on their own? Because if they've got shifty enough moves, if they can get skinny through the hole and they can create for themselves, they can make people miss. That is translatable when it comes to the running back position. Do they have hands? Can they catch? Are they being utilized in the running game? Pass blocking is something that you can learn. You have to be willing to learn. And I want to see a running back that's got a big, thick steak ass. I like the big booty, and I don't like these guys with little skinny butts and skinny thighs, because they're probably not going to be able to put on that much more weight. And if they do, will it slow them down? But when you got a guy that's a grown-ass man at 220 pounds as a freshman, that's a pretty good sign that he's going to be NFL size when it's time for the NFL Combine. And if he's already running a 4.4 40, that's decent for that size. But if you're looking at a guy that's a freshman that's 160 pounds, you really are going to project that he's going to gain 40 pounds of good weight between now and the NFL? Probably not. So what is his role? As a fantasy running back, he's probably a gadget player, maybe a third down back. You're looking for the guy that's going to be the workhorse, the guy that can catch, that a jack of all trades. Like Todd Gurley, before he got injured, was that kind of guy. And so that's what I'm looking for in running backs. And those kind of things, I think, do translate. Wide receivers are much, much more difficult. But I'm looking for the technician. I'm looking for the guy that can be a good route runner, that gets separation. I've been fooled way too many times on the big guys that are physical, that can out physical the ball, but they've also got to they've at least got to be a nuanced route runner. They've got to be able to get open. And not every play can be contested. If every play is contested in college, what are you going to do when you're finally up against defensive backs that are at least your speed, maybe faster than you, maybe could jump another foot taller than you, higher than you? So wide receivers are a lot more tricky to peg. And plus running backs are less team dependent. They're less scheme dependent. Mm-hmm. There is a difference between the zone blocking and the man and how a team, runs the certain offense. But with wide receivers, it makes a big difference. And which position do they play? Are they the X, the Y, or the Z? Are they the slot guy? A slot guy in the NFL is a pretty good compiler of fantasy points, but they don't have the highest ceiling. The X guy, the guy like DK Metcalf that can get down the field and yards after catch, those are the kinds of guys that you love to discover in college. But again, it's really, really hard to identify them. I had a hard time in college. I like CeeDee Lamb a lot. I like T. Higgins a lot. And as it turns out, I think they're both going to be pretty good pros. Mm-hmm. But their games are completely different from each other.
Yeah.
And tight end is really, really difficult to pick, especially because their bodies change so much. The biggest thing with tight ends, the reason it takes so long in the NFL, even if you like a college tight end, you're going to bank on holding them for 6 years sometimes before they even produce for you, because the blocking schemes in the NFL are so much different than in college. And they're more like a lineman. And then you got guys like Evan Ingram, who's a glorified tight end, kind of more like a wide receiver that is off the line. He's not he's not with the lineman. He's off. I'm drawing a blank on the term, but Evan Ingram struggles because of the quarterback. And so again, that does depend on, does the team have an alpha wide receiver? And if they don't, then they can become a productive fantasy tight end. But you still don't know. You're not going to know that while they're in college, and you don't know which landing spot. So for tight end, landing spot matters more than it does for the other positions. And then quarterback, the percentage, your chances, even in a super flex, of getting a starting quarterback that's viable in the college landscape, your hit rate is about 6%. So I try to avoid them for the most part. But I'm looking for guys that have a live arm, that don't have to struggle to throw the ball deep, guys that can learn from their mistakes, guys that work hard, guys that have decent mechanics, but you want them to be confident, not necessarily cocky, but confident. And I look at the backstories for all the guys. It doesn't matter what position. I look at what their coaches are saying. I listen to interviews. I try to, get the heartometer is my one metric. Guys like Joseph Ngata, one of the hardest workers. He's a wide receiver for Clemson, been riddled by injuries. He's a sophomore this year. I really thought he was going to break out. But part of the reason he didn't was he was banged up with injury, and it was a shortened season because of COVID. I'm not going to give up on him. I still think he's got a lot of talent, but more so than anything, he is a hard-working guy. And when it comes to the NFL, it is now your job. You can't be a lazy son of a gun and make it in the NFL. If you work hard and you have your ears open and your eyes open, you're going to learn and develop a lot more quickly. Look at Josh Allen. Everybody was saying, oh, he's got a great arm, but he's not a great passer. But he's worked his butt off. Yeah. And now look at him. He's not just a guy that slings it all over in any direction. He actually has touch now. And it's nice to see guys develop. And the other thing about quarterbacks, a lot of them, there was a report on ESPN not too awful long ago that I thought was very interesting. A lot of quarterbacks don't develop until their late 20s, 28, 29. Look at Ryan Tannehill and the resurgence that he's had.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, when you talked about Ryan Tannehill before this season, they'd roll their eyes and be like, oh, yeah, him.
Yeah.
But look what he did this year. And so if you can hang on to somebody like that through the ups and downs and keep them on your roster, you're going to usually get paid off.
So was there a guy that took a little while to get acclimated to the NFL that you were high on in college and you weren't doubting his talent, but in the NFL you were kind of like, I don't know if this guy's going to make it, and then he ended up doing something? Or is there just a guy that you had faith in and it just took him a little longer to get going?
I'm trying to think of a good example, and I really can't think of a good example. I
out there. We just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for the amount of time that I've been playing Devy, like a lot of my very first Devy pick was Todd Gurley.
Okay.
And that was before he was going to be coming out that year. So it wasn't that big of a reach. He was already touted as one of the top guys. But I had a lot of faith in him. I can tell you, I've had a lot of misses on guys like Elijah Holyfield. He had the size, he had the speed. He was a track player. He ran track in high school. And so I like the multi-sport athletes. His father was a famous boxer, so he had the bloodlines of athleticism, but he liked to smoke dope. I like to smoke dope, but I'm not an athlete that's going to be making millions of dollars either. And you got to be able to. He was lazy for a guy that you would think has that good work ethic. He ended up being not even given a chance in the NFL, and nor did he deserve one. But I'm trying to think of slow starters. I mean, like I like Nick Chubb coming out, and he didn't get the greatest landing spot, but I had faith in him that he was going to cream rises to the top is one of my favorite sayings. I liked Allen Robinson coming out of college. He ended up working out okay. I liked Chris Godwin, but again, to his landing spot, there were a lot of mouths to feed, and as it turns out, he was still fine with that. But it's easier to peg running backs in college than it is any other position.
That's good to know. Yeah, I was going to ask you because I did do a league that had Devy in it for a little tiny bit, and I was like, it was a Bosch league, and I was like, I gotta go because John Bosch gives you like a million different things. I was like, I can't do this, but yeah. So I had drafted DeAndre Swift. That's who I remember when we were doing that. I was like, all right, I'm gonna. That's the name.
Another Georgia boy. I love him. He's another really good running back that I like how he's looked so far.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And if I would have stuck with that league, who knows where I'd be, but but I'm glad whoever took over. Yeah. So we'll go into you being with Under the Helmet. Can you go ahead and just tell everybody that's listening what Under the Helmet, first and foremost, what they're all about, and then what you do over there as well?
Sure. So Under the Helmet, Chad Parsons is the owner, and he's a great guy. He's been doing Dynasty. In fact, funny story, I just like when I got into redraft, I started scouring for articles. Once I started getting into Dynasty, same thing. I Googled Dynasty, information, and Under the Helmet was there. I read some of the articles. They had some free articles, and then I became a subscriber because I can tell, just like I'm a pretty good cook, and I can tell by looking at a recipe how something is going to taste. So when I look at a recipe, I can already start tweaking it in my head. I can say, okay, I'm going to change this out for this, a little bit of this. But I could tell by reading the articles Under the Helmet from Doug and Chad and listening to their podcast, I could tell that my Dynasty life was very similar to their philosophy, and I was going to go by their philosophy. It just blended nicely. A lot of the other ones, when I was reading them, it's like, no, this doesn't make sense. I'm just, and so I started emailing Chad questions and texting him messages on Twitter. And then he read one of my questions on the show, and I was like, hey, that's really cool. And then Doug started saying, well, wow, Chad mentioned Katie's becoming one of my favorite subscribers. She asked some really good questions on strategy and things like that. And Doug's like, we should get her on the show. And they said that on the show. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even know like that was even possible. And he was like, she should write for us on the website. And so I submitted my first article in 2015 and Chad published it. I was like, hey, this is cool. And so then we started chit-chatting more. And it wasn't long after that he had me on the podcast as a guest, which they rarely have guests on Under the Helmet. And I was a guest, and I was a guest like 2 or 3 times. And Tim Torch was a guest a couple of times. And then Doug, because of busy life, had to move on. And Chad asked Tim and I to both be co-hosts on the podcast. And I've been co-host on Under the Helmet. It is put out on iTunes and Stitcher Radio every Wednesday. And it's usually a little bit less than an hour per show, anywhere between 30 and 40 minutes generally. But we talk Dynasty. It's a full year-round podcast.
Cool.
We do also do premium podcasts for paid subscribers where we really get into the strategy sessions. And that's where I drop a lot of my Devy love, my Devy knowledge is on the premium paid subscription side. I haven't written anything in quite a long time, but the nice thing is Chad doesn't need me to at this point. So,
there you go.
yeah. And I'm also on Off the Rails podcast recently. Jeremy Browen, he's known as Dynasty Madman.
Oh, yeah.
He got me and a few others together on Friday afternoons, like lunchtime, and we'll just spitball all kinds of stuff. So that's a lot of fun also.
Yeah,
and
I bet. That sounds fun.
Yeah. And I'm guest on several podcasts. I love being a guest on other people's podcasts. I appreciate you having me on here.
Sure.
I think you've got a great thing going on. I love listening to your podcast.
Thank you for saying that. I'm still trying to get the hang of it. I'm not the best at asking questions. I'm really great at writing them down. I'm just not great at actually asking them. But here's a question. Maybe it's a great one. Maybe it's not. I don't know. When you started podcasting, the very first time you ever guested on the podcast, how did you feel? What were your nerves like? And then in front of the camera, in front of the mic or whatever, how do you kind of psych yourself up to do that every time you have to?
All right. So I'm not a normal person.
Okay.
You've been to my house.
Yeah.
We've partied a few times. You know that I'm like a jack of all trades, kind of a Renaissance woman.
For sure.
And there isn't a whole lot that scares me. I teach as part of my regular job. Mm-hmm. I teach. So I do Zoom podcasts all the time, or webcasts all the time. I do webinars. I do a lot of that. I was a DJ in college, so I like being on the radio. I announced hockey games for high school, when they were like, XYZ just scored with 3 minutes and 33 seconds in the second quarter, second period, and things like that. So I was already used to that kind of thing.
Right.
And in fact, I told Chad, I was like, I was a hockey announcer and I was a DJ in college. Like, I am pretty comfortable with a microphone in my hand. And my whole life, I've always been about, I try to make people laugh. I try to make people feel comfortable and have fun. And if you can't do that, like, that's just who I am. I want to get as many people involved in having a good time.
That's awesome. Yeah. And getting as many people involved in having a good time. I want to talk about the importance of Twitter on the fantasy community as well, because I know that you're there, and anytime somebody asks for Devy follows, you're the first person that I put in like 30. You probably get tagged all the time when people are asking for Devy. Why do you think that Twitter is such an important part of being in the fantasy football industry?
I think that a lot of people, whether they are in a league or on a podcast or writing articles for websites, it's a place where they can just be a community, and it doesn't matter if you're in a league with me. We can chit chat. You can ask me any dynasty question. A lot of times I'll take it offline and say, hey, I'll follow you, DM me. Let's make sure your league mates aren't looking at this trade that we're talking about. But it's such a friendly community, and it's so important because it's like a big family. And with a big family, there's assholes. But there's a lot of good people.
Yeah.
There's way more good than there is bad. And I've met a lot of the people that I chat with. And I like when I travel for work and I'm going to Denver, Colorado, I'll even say on the podcast the week before, hey guys, I'm going to be in Denver next week. If any of you live in that area and you want to have a drink and talk some fantasy football, let's get together. And I'll usually have 2 or 3 people say, hey, let's get together on Wednesday night of that week. And I'm like, sure. So I've met a lot of people, not only on Twitter, but just in the fantasy football community. And it's a good thing. It's really good. I chit-chatted today with a friend of mine that's across the pond. And we talked for an hour and a half on Skype today, just talking fantasy football. And it was awesome.
I mean, everybody brings that up about meeting people and just being able to like communicate and talk with people that actually care about the same stuff you do. Because I know in my everyday life, nobody is as crazy about talking fantasy football as I am. Like the season's, whatever. So I can talk about it with you guys like in the middle of July or whatever. And, February, March, April, all of those off months, people we'll still talk about it. It's so dope. And you were talking about meeting people from the community in real life and how you do you're like, hey, that's a really cool idea too, to like announce it on your podcast, because I should have thought of that. But meeting people in person, meeting people from the community and the industry in person, like, how does that, because I've done it too. How does it make you feel to like actually meet these people that you talk to that are so-called strangers? Is it ever nerve-wracking to like talk to somebody that you've talked to online?
Not really. Again, my whole life I've been gregarious. I've been outgoing.
Yeah.
I try to make sure they feel comfortable. One of my buddies that lives up in outside of Omaha, Nebraska. I love college baseball. My Razorbacks have been to the College World Series 2 out of the last 3 years. They got canceled this year because of COVID, but hopefully, like, I'm looking forward to going to the College World Series again in 2021. But I got to meet one of our listeners and I got him into Dynasty.
Cool.
I got to meet him at the College World Series and we were chit-chatting. He's a graphic artist and I've been able to help him through this promote his stuff. And he's the one that made my Diva of Devy on Twitter, my Avi, and I will promote him all the time, but he's a great person, Dynasty Evan, and he'll still ask me Dynasty questions from time to time. But every year that I'm in Omaha, we have drinks, we chit chat, we watch baseball together, and it's a great time.
I was going to bring up the Diva of Devy because that's your thing, basically. I mean, that's how you're known as, the Diva. That's a great nickname. So
Jeremy gave me that name.
Jeremy gave you So how does it feel being like, I asked this because you're the second woman that I've had on this show. So I do feel like I want to get more women on the show, but I want to make sure that, I get a wide variety of people, and right. You are like the cream of the crop, the top of like Devy, and you're like the woman that like, they're like, hey, can you guys list off some women that like speak Devy and list your name off? And most of the time I'm already following her. So how does it feel? Like, how does that make you feel knowing that you're like one of the top in your field?
It feels good and I like it, but what's more important to me is just, again, the community and bringing people together, helping build other people up, helping, I don't necessarily have a brand or whatever. Like,
yeah,
I like that they call me that and they identify me as that. And, I couldn't have done it without Nick Whalen. Nick Whalen was one of my earlier influences. I even thanked him on Twitter. I don't remember. It was like several months ago. And I know that he was touched. He's human just like we are. And if it wasn't for Nick Whalen and the Devy Report, I don't know that I would have gotten into researching it as much as I did. Now, I don't always agree with his opinions on players, but that's the beauty of this sport. Right. You're not always going to agree. And it is neat to have a niche besides Dynasty, to be the Diva of Devy and to have that be like my calling card and my signature, I guess, if you will. It's kind of neat. Yeah.
That's it's really cool when somebody reaches out to you and vice versa, when you reach out to somebody and they're actually like really appreciative that you reached out to them to tell them like, hey, I wouldn't be here without you. So just thought you'd like to know.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice do you have to people who are just starting out and they're scared that they're just not going to know where to start and they're not going to know what they need to do to like get to having even like 50 followers on Twitter, or like have a couple people read their articles or listen to their podcast? What kind of advice do you have to people to get themselves out there?
So first of all, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid of anything. It's fun. You're going to be talking about football. You're going to be writing about football, and you're going to learn, you're going to grow. And just like taking a blank piece of paper, it's getting that first letter. It's writing that first word, that first sentence. And then it starts to flow and it becomes fun and part of you. Join as many groups as you can. Get involved with people that you respect on Twitter. You've learned from them, follow them. And then in turn, your presence will grow, and just keep putting yourself out there. I remember some of the early reviews, people, they would say stuff, oh, Katie's so annoying because of this, this, and this. And it's like, well, okay, I'll learn from that. And I will take that with a grain of salt, because there's always going to be detractors and things like that. But you've got to just, again, be willing to put one step in front of the other and keep moving. Don't stay in the same spot. Keep learning, keep growing, and have fun with it.
100%. So to the people who are concerned that they're going to get the troll jobs, the jerks, and all that stuff, how do you handle that? Because I know I deal with them too. Everybody deals with them. How do you handle that so that it doesn't like eat away at you? I know some people, it probably not you. You probably don't care, but
well, thankfully I don't get that a lot.
Yeah,
knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
But I have seen a couple. You just got to ignore it. It's just like anything. It's like the bully on the playground. Like, just walk around them, smile at them. Don't let them know that they're bugging you, and just walk away. Don't engage. There's no sense in getting on a Twitter fight with somebody, or, having a voodoo doll and putting pins in the person's picture and things like that. Life is too short. Just do your thing. Not everybody's going to love you. Not everybody's going to hate you. And learn from the haters as much as you learn from the people that love you. Just try to take it and learn a little bit, and just keep going, especially if it's something that you love.
Let's say that the people that are starting out, because I like to direct a lot of this podcast towards because there's a big boom lately of newbies coming up the ranks and putting out their content. But sometimes I see people, they'll even ask me this question: how do I guest on podcast? So what would you suggest to somebody that's like, I want to get some reps under my belt, I want to, before I actually jump into having my own podcast? What kind of advice do you have to people that are trying to like make a name for themselves and hop around and talk to different people?
Well, and again, if you want to be on a podcast, you're probably already on Twitter. You probably already follow and listen to. I would listen to as many podcasts in that genre, in that topic, just to listen to the different styles, the different everything. And it's okay to ask. If you want to be a guest on somebody's podcast, hit them up on Twitter. And if they don't have an opening, they'll tell you. They'll be honest. But they may say, hey, but I got this guy that really needs a guest coming up. Or maybe they'll put you down for the future. But don't take that as, again, you've got to be patient as you learn and people learn about you. It's the same thing. So I would say, don't be afraid to ask, and be surrounded by the people that you listen to and see what they're doing. Just kind of monitor, ask them questions. How did you really get big? How did you get started?
Yeah, I guess that is great advice, because with you, they were like, hey, Katie knows her stuff. We're going to invite her to come on the podcast. So stay active and put your thoughts out there, and hopefully, something good will come out of it. When you first started in the industry and you first, made your rounds on podcasts and you were writing and doing all of that stuff, did it ever feel like it was too overwhelming, or did you know how to balance your personal life and this fantasy football obsession that we all have?
Yeah. I'm the kind of person, I work hard and I play hard. And so I I'm not married. I don't have kids. I've got a boyfriend, but time-wise, I've always been pretty good at time management. It is something that you have to watch, though, because especially if you're married with children, it does take time and you've got to pull yourself away. You do have to budget, just like you do for work. You've got to budget time and say, okay, this is the time when I'm going to be doing this. And then make time for the other people in your life also and say, okay, this is date night, or this is what we're going to do. And, you know, you still have to live your life, but everybody has hobbies. I look at this as a hobby that pays. And so again, if your significant other can be involved in it in somehow, maybe they can be your manager, maybe they can help you give them a job or something, help bring them in, excite them about the whole thing. You know, here comes my dynasty winnings. It's right after Christmas and now we can pay all the bills, you know, just however you want to hook them, but try to get them involved.
Try is the key word there.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't always work.
Do you have any advice for me to give to Sarah? Maybe I'll make her my manager.
Send Sarah over to my house and we'll cook and we'll have fun while you're doing your podcast stuff.
There you go. Because she's always like, you're leaving me again to go do a podcast. So, you know, if she has something to do, then maybe it won't be so bad. Instead of cooking and cleaning while I'm up here talking to people, she doesn't get it. What about your friends? Do they come to you for fantasy advice? Then when they found out that you were like writing for a site or being on a podcast, were they like, oh my gosh, I can't be in a league with her? Or how are your friends with all of that?
Well, yeah. So I do a lot of teaching. I teach adults, and many times when I'm teaching, let's say, building codes, which is one of the most boring topics, unless you take one of my classes, I bring it to life. And many times I do let the people know, hey, I'm on a fantasy football podcast, and we'll chit chat about football before and after. And that makes them feel at ease. And then, yeah, they come up, they'll email me for years. Sometimes like I'll be at a bar and I'll be chit chatting with a, you know, whoever, a guy, a gal, whoever, talking football. And then they'll find out that I love fantasy football and they'll get my phone number and start texting me. Maybe it'll be once a year and I don't hear from them again. But then it's like, oh, I really need to pick up a sleeper. Who would you recommend? And they'll text me the roster and who is available and stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of my friends that are already like my friends locally, they don't play in leagues. And I've had a few coworkers where I've invited them to Dynasty and they've been in leagues with me, but for the most part, they found that Dynasty wasn't for them and they got out of it. But
you know, it happens. It's like,
yeah,
I mean, you're in that.
It's not for everybody. I mean, it is addicting. I love the trading. I love having the rookie drafts. I love that it's year round. I love that there's trading in redraft. There's never, you can't really find a non-lopsided trade in redraft. So most people don't do it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have that league that I have that's redraft and you're in it, and a bunch of people who have never played fantasy football, or this is like their second or third or whatever year, are in it as well, just as a learning tool, because I know women sometimes, which is stupid to say, but it's true based on who I've talked to. So don't hold me to this, but that it can be kind of intimidating to join a league with not just guys, but like women who are knowledgeable about fantasy football as well. And I know that you being there when we do our live drafts for the redraft, I see you over there like helping people out, like giving them like, this guy did this in college. It's so cool to see you like mentor these newbies. Why do you think it is important to get more people involved, and especially women, in fantasy football?
Well, again, it's like anything else. If it's something that you like to do and you know that these people have an interest or they wouldn't be there, but in order to make it something that's sustainable, they've got to learn about it. And so I've been my whole life just a natural born teacher. I want to help others because if they can understand it, then it becomes fun for them. And again, I'm all about the fun. I want to help everybody have fun if I can. And you've also seen that I like to entertain. Like I'll go up to the board and I've got a dance or a poem or a song or something about that player that I'm about to draft. And I usually make people crack up, but that's for me, that's part of getting people disarmed so that they don't think that, hey, this is a chore, that this is fun. And I can't wait to do that again next year. And maybe I didn't do so great this year, but I learned a little bit and I did have fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, with COVID and everything, it really did kind of throw a wrench in everybody's plans for fantasy football. How did that affect Devy? Because I can feel that being something that was even bigger for you evaluating college players than it would be for us who already know these NFL players that are.
Yeah, I mean, the season was cut short. There were games that were canceled or moved. You didn't really get to see the full competition in some games. But for me, evaluating players, again, it doesn't matter who you're playing against. I'm looking at what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And if you're beating a guy that you should beat and you're beating him by 5 yards, then good. That's great. But if you're beating him by a yard and you should be beating him by 5 yards, I can see that too. But it's harder because there's less sample size. And then there's also guys that opted out. So you're not going to get to see them until the NFL Combine, maybe the Senior Bowl. We're not going to the Senior Bowl this year. There's a lot of restrictions on that. So we talked about it and decided that it's not really going to be worth it to go. But I will be watching. I'll be watching as much. And if we can watch practices, then I would do that. I like to record the film. I like to record the games. And then I like to watch them in the off season between now, once the NFL is over, between now and the NFL Combine, I'll rewatch college games from the beginning of the season, middle of the season, and end of the season so that you can see how players progressed as well. And to me, that is more important than necessarily how many games. Did they improve? Did they learn? Did they grow?
So during the summer, do you hang out in your pool and watch TV and watch your TV with all the college players? Is that what goes down?
Sometimes. I mean, a lot of times I'll just have the music on and we'll be in the pool. And when you're drinking like that, it just depends on who's over. But on my patio, it's Kate's Grill and Chill, and it's a great place to hang out, and cold beverages are served, and lots of fun.
We'll talk a little about you, your everyday life, and all the good stuff that you've got going on. You brought up the Razorbacks earlier, and if anybody's living under a rock, Katie, it's kind of a big deal for Katie. So, Katie, why don't you go ahead and how did you become a fan of the Razorbacks? And also, who's your all-time favorite Razorback?
Okay. So I'm from Vermont. I already mentioned that. Yeah. And Vermont is known for which college football team? None. They have there's no college football in Vermont. College basketball. They got the UVM Catamounts. They make the big dance maybe once every dozen years if they're lucky. And so they're not, and college hockey is the biggest thing up in Vermont. And we've had some NHL players from the Vermont Catamounts team. But when I first moved to Texas in 2005, the territory that I had was Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. And I love sports. So I wanted to find a college team to support. I looked at the Texas teams, Texas A&M, Texas Tech. Nah. I was working on a project at Boone Pickens Stadium up at Oklahoma State. They were doing phase 3, closing in the end zone and doing the suites. And I was working on that project. So I got to see the stadium. And again, no. Oklahoma, we were working on their basketball arena. And I got to go see a basketball game. Again, not really. But then I went to Little Rock, and a lot of the fans there, the entire state is Razorback fans. Yeah. And they're up in Fayetteville, which is northwest Arkansas. I didn't get up there, but everybody was talking Razorbacks and just seemed so friendly about it. And part of me loving a team is as much loving the fans as it is the teams and the coaches, the work ethic, that kind of thing. And I really fell in love with the Razorbacks. I hated LSU. I did not like Louisiana Tech. I didn't like any of the other teams. I fell in love with the Razorbacks in 2005, and I've been a big fan since. Now, as far as who's my favorite Razorback, I would have to say Hunter Henry.
Oh, okay. Double H. I like it. That's especially since we were talking about tight ends earlier about how they're really hard to hit, so.
Well, and back when Hunter Henry was coming out, I was still in my infancy in Dynasty, and Chad was asking me questions about him, and I really was high on Hunter Henry, but I didn't want my biases. I didn't want my Arkansas Razorback bias. I didn't want to say, man, this guy is the best tight end coming out in this class, even though I thought he's one of the best coming out in this class, because I didn't want to sway. I wasn't sure if it was my own biases or what. And then Chad's wife had said something about watching an interview with Hunter Henry, and she didn't like him because of his interview. And I'm like, no, he's a really nice guy. I don't know what she's seeing. I really don't know what she's seeing. But my favorite play of all time is the Hunter Henry hook and lateral, where they were playing Ole Miss and they were down. It was like fourth and 25, and the time was running out. There was still like 40 seconds on the clock. Threw the ball to Hunter Henry, who caught it on the sideline, and then he lateraled it back, and then it went to 3 or 4 different players. And Alex Collins, the running back, got a hold of it. He got the first down, but when he was being tackled, he tried to lateral it, but thankfully did not fumble it. He didn't realize he had gotten the first down, and he thought that the clock was going to be out. He thought they had to score. So now they're on like the 11-yard line, and they ended up coming back and beating Ole Miss in that game. And I got a shirt, Woo Pig Lateral. I mean, it was one of the best plays and will go down in history in Arkansas Razorback lore.
So that's super awesome. And it's super awesome how you found the team that you wanted to root for. For somebody who's like me, or, just the common, I watch NFL, I don't watch college. Is there a certain thing that maybe we're doing wrong that will get us to like it? Or do you think it's just not everybody's cup of tea?
It's not everybody's cup of tea. I've got some friends of mine that love college and don't like pros at all. Yeah. And I've got others that like NFL or like the pros, but don't like college at all. And I like college baseball, basketball, and football. And I like pro. I don't watch a lot of pro baseball anymore. Yeah. When I was a kid growing up, that's all when I did watch anything on TV, it was baseball, because my dad at least tolerated baseball. My brothers and sisters at least tolerated that. But I couldn't watch football or even basketball. I like those events more in person. I'll go to the Texas Rangers. I'll go to the Mavericks and watch a game there. But with football, I'll watch that on TV and even have big Super Bowl parties, even if my team's not in the finals.
Yeah, the multiple sports that you watched and watching baseball growing up. I watched a lot of basketball growing up, like a lot of basketball. Like my parents were like obsessed with the Dallas Mavericks. Like, so when, so growing up like that, I mean, they were Cowboys fans too. And I think I don't know why that took over my life instead of basketball, but I get it with the same with baseball. Do you have a baseball team that you follow? I mean, I know you don't watch a lot of it and you go to Rangers games, but
the Boston Red Sox are my team. I've been a Red Sox fan since I could breathe. And I love the Boston Red Sox. I didn't ever fall in love with the Celtics. I did go to see some Celtics games. I like the Charlotte Hornets back in the 90s when they were first coming onto the scene. And I was coaching youth basketball up in Maine at the time. And our team was the South Portland Hornets. And so Muggsy Bogues and Larry Johnson back in the day, that was the big, thunder and lightning. But hockey, Calgary Flames, not even a Bruins fan. I like the Calgary Flames, but I haven't even watched a lot of hockey in it seems like since I left New England.
I was going to ask if you've been in any Stars games or anything.
I have. I've been to a couple Stars. I mean, I love hockey. That's what got me into coaching in the first place. Okay. Back then, my college sweetheart, he and I were engaged to get married, and he was a hockey coach. peewee, 12 and 13-year-old. And so I would go to every practice, every game. That's how I started announcing the hockey games, because he went from peewee hockey to coaching high school. And so I was involved in, all the parents knew me. I was kind of like the manager of the parents to make sure they stayed in line and got their kids to practice and stuff. And when we had a big like out of town event, because we'd go to hockey tournaments all over New England, I'd make sure to get everybody organized and that kind of stuff. I actually became the goalie coach. Oh, wow. My boyfriend, my fiance, let me coach the goalies and shoot wrist shots and slap shots at them, just to keep them in practice and do drills with them. And that's what got me interested. And then shortly after that, we broke up. And then I was so like needing to fill my time with something instead of thinking about him and everything. Yeah. Then there was a position for a Little League baseball coach. And I was like, you know what? I know baseball and I know a little bit about coaching. Yeah. And it's a volunteer position. So the worst they can do is say no. So I went in and they were like, yeah, sure. You could take the team. And it happened to be the Red Sox. So I coached the Red Sox, and then I liked it enough. I started, learning new drills and going to camps and things like that. And
that is so awesome. Like, I didn't know that about you. And how is coaching youth sports? Because I know that when I played soccer as like a 5-year-old, they just threw my mom into the role because they needed somebody. So somebody that actually like pays attention to the rules and knows how the game is played. How was coaching these younger athletes?
Well, it was a lot of fun. And like with anything else that I do, if I'm going to do it, if I'm going to commit, I will fully immerse myself to make sure that I knew the rules inside out. I became an umpire. Same thing with basketball. When I coached basketball and football, I became a referee for both basketball and football, because the best way to know the rules is to have to enforce them. And you can also see so much on the field when you're an umpire or a referee. You see things at game speed that help you as a coach. So I became a highly sought after coach because a lot of the kids, because I didn't have any kids myself, I wasn't having favorites. I always told the kids, we're going to win every practice and we'll let the games take care of themselves. In the 14 years that I coached, I can remember yelling only 3 times, because you don't have to yell to get your point across. These are people. That doesn't mean I was soft. That doesn't mean that I wasn't competitive. I was, and I would teach them all how to be very competitive and work hard to get more playing time. And it wasn't something that was mandated. We had 2 innings and 1 at bat that you had to play. But if you wanted to earn more, come to practice, show up, work hard, and you're going to earn more playing time.
I like it.
Yeah, no, it was fun. Yeah. I remember the very first time that I coached football, it was 4th and 5th grade flag football in Portland, Maine. And all the parents came to the first practice because they're like, a woman football coach? Like, I got to see this. They watched the practice. And at the very end of the practice, I sent all the kids deep. And I was like, go deep. And I threw the ball 45 yards down the field to see who could catch it. And one of them came up with it. And they all come running back. We did our cheer. And then they went and left. I never saw another parent the rest of the season except at games. I mean, they were like, okay, she's cool. This is fun.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. It is cool to hear your take on everything, because not being a parent of any of the kids, because I mean, most of the time it is a parent of one of the kids that's out there coaching. Yeah. And yeah, you were talking about favorites and everything else. And you at least made the playing field level for everybody, that everybody who wanted to play could get a shot at it. And if they put their hard work and determination into it, then so that's pretty rad. Actually, yeah. I'm like kind of like, wow, I didn't even think of that. So
I miss it. I keep in touch with them on Facebook, which is cool. Like now, one of the kids that I coached when he was in 5th and 6th grade, I coached him in football and basketball and also baseball. I coached him in all 3 sports. He's got 2 children. He lives in California and he just turned 35. Oh, wow. And I'm like, holy crap, Ryan, don't get any older. You keep getting older and that makes me get older.
Yeah, like, right.
I just, but no, I miss it. When I moved to Texas, I traveled too much and I had to give it up. But I absolutely love those days.
And you moved to Texas because of work. I know you brought
Yeah.
that up, right?
Yeah.
So, and you've touched on what you do. What exactly do you do outside of the fantasy football realm? Because some people think if you have this many followers, you know this much stuff, that must be your full-time job, but really it isn't. So, yeah.
I'm a corporate trainer in the commercial door and hardware industry. So I do a lot of commercial construction projects. I was a spec writer. I've been in the industry for 36 years, and now I'm a full-time trainer, teacher.
That's cool.
And I'll teach mostly guys, but I'll teach installation. I'll teach, how to core a door for electrified hardware, and how, building codes, there's so many building codes when it comes to getting people out of a building quickly, and how many exits do we need, and how do we calculate that? How do we figure it out? So that's what I do. And, it's very complicated, but yet I don't like to talk about it a lot, just because it is so complicated, but it's fun. It's fun. I absolutely love it. I've been doing it, like I said, for 36 years. I can totally see myself retiring with the company that I'm with. I love them. I've been with them now for 12, 13, 14 years. Yeah, 14. It'll be 15 years in August.
Wow. And yeah, you being able to teach people and do all that for your job really does come in handy for what you do with fantasy football, because you are such a great teacher and you are so good in front of the camera and behind the microphone. So,
well, the other thing, it works both ways. So all of the things that I learned through fantasy football, building a nice Excel spreadsheet and how to cross-reference from one sheet to the other with hyperlinks and all that, I use that in my day-to-day job. Expanding text to column, like before fantasy football, I never even knew that feature existed. And I do that all the time now. So yes, it sometimes encroaches on my work, but for the most part, it makes me better at what I do for work. Also, a lot of similarities.
And something else that you're pretty skilled at is cooking. I know you love to cook. I know that you post photos all the time of what you're making or your garden and all the fun stuff. And I've eaten your food, so I know that it's legit. What is your favorite meal to cook?
That depends on the time of year, but my favorite is Thanksgiving meal. Thanksgiving, because there's so many different dishes and timing has to come out just right. But honestly, whether I'm grilling or whether I've recently got an Instant Pot and air fryer, and air fryer is more of a misnomer. I just grilled salmon for dinner, 7 minutes in the air fryer, perfectly grilled salmon, perfectly healthy. It's not like a deep fryer or anything like that. But for an individual, I don't like to have a lot of leftovers. So the Instant Pot and the air fryer, when I'm cooking just for me, makes it perfect to have a healthy hot meal, different meal every single day, and not have to worry about too many leftovers. But I love cooking stews. I love chicken marsala is a really good meal. I make a great meatloaf. I grow vegetables in my garden year round. That's the beauty of Texas. I've built some raised garden beds. I just harvested some snow peas last night. I had broccoli from my garden, but I love to grow. It isn't necessarily less expensive, but I know that I don't use any chemicals, and I know the life of the vegetable, and it's so fresh. Night and day difference from what you buy at the grocery store. Even the farmer's market, there's no comparison.
Yeah, I keep trying to convince my wife that we need to do something like that, but the dogs eat any plant we put out there. So
if and when you're ready, you also know that I like to build things, and I've got a pretty good workshop. I'm going to be helping my neighbor build 2 raised garden beds, and I have no problem helping you guys build some raised beds so your dogs don't get in them.
Oh, I'm totally going to tell Sarah that tonight. She's going to be like, okay, when can we have Katie come over? You haven't been over to my new house, so we're going to be like,
I haven't. I need to see it. I've seen it.
I know. We were going to do, COVID screwed up the live draft this year. And
I know it.
It was so disappointing. But I want to go and talk about how we were talking earlier. This is just like the end part where I get to know a little bit more about you, and I want you to describe the Razorbacks feel at your house, because you walk into your house and you go, and there are certain areas devoted just to Razorbacks. I mean, you've got all kinds of stuff there. So just tell the listeners exactly how that's all going on.
All right. So when you first walk in, I've got landscaping out front with a nice rock garden. I've got a tree stump that I made a bench out of. And right next to the tree stump is a metal Razorback that a friend of mine in Arkansas gave me, bright Razorback red. Then you come to the front door. It's a bright red, Razorback red door. You knock on the door, you come in, go down the hall, and to the right where my Razorback room, it's my living room. It's the place where I hang out. I built a coffee table out of slate that I had left over. I made the frame out of oak, and I used slate for the top. And I painted on 2 pieces of slate. It's 12-inch by 12-inch slate. I painted a Razorback on it. It's my Razorback coffee table. And I made a side table to match, but without the painted Razorback on it. But it does have a stained glass Razorback lamp sitting on top of it. Up above that, there's a hog ledge. It's about 12 inches deep and 14 inches from the ceiling. It's just a shelf that was there, and I had to use it for something. So I've got all kinds of pigs and hogs of different types hanging out on the hog ledge. Artwork on the wall, one-of-a-kind pieces. My sister bought me, she saw this at an antique store in Vermont. It's a Arkansas carved Razorback toilet seat. That's maroon colored. That's one of the things hanging on my wall. I've made some of the artwork myself. I've bought some pieces that are one of a kind. And then the wall where the TV is, I painted that Razorback red, and that's my baseball wall. All of the things from the College World Series, Omahogs, and my hog tune that I had custom made, the names of all the players with Ribby, RBI, Ribby Hog, standing on the pitcher's mound, getting ready to throw a fastball. That's my Razorback room. I've got a rug, lamp, switch plates. Everything in that room is all Razorback red or Razorback. And then you go out to the back near my workshop, near the garage, and my new fence has a stained glass Razorback window in it. And on the back patio where I have my chill and grill, I've got a round Razorback wall hanging that says Arkansas Razorbacks. That's cool. But it's not really that overboard.
I don't know. Well, do you have a Razorback tattoo? See, that's my Razorback tattoo, except for it's not really a Razorback. You can't really see it right now, and you guys definitely can't. But well, it's a javelina.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And my sister's boyfriend is a big Razorbacks fan as well, and he's like, "Wait, why did you get?" I was like, "No, it's a javelina," but now it's just.
When I was out in Arizona, I got to see some javelina. My friend had. They came through every day at around 5 o'clock. I've got 0 tattoos.
0. Oh, see, that might be shocking to some people. I just assume everybody has at least one now.
I almost did. My mother passed away in 2003, which is also what facilitated me being able to move away from Vermont. I was not going to move away as long as she was still alive, because she was my best friend, and it would have killed her if I would have left. I had already moved to Maine. I was in Maine for 5 years. When I moved back to Vermont, she was the happiest woman in the whole world, and I just could not leave her. Yeah. So when she died in 2003, I was going to get a tattoo on the back of my neck, a yellow rose in memory of my mother. But I really do not like needles.
Yeah.
1 hour later.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
I bought an Ethernet cord, but I have not had time to run downstairs and connect it. So that I bought a really long ass Ethernet cord because I know this internet is so stupid. We're only allowed.
I was wondering what happened. It's like all of a sudden.
Yeah, we have one internet company that we can use, and they're like, "Oh, you have the fastest internet," and I'm like, "I would like to beg to differ, but there's nothing I can do about it." Anyway, we are close to the end of this podcast, and I think that's what's going on with the internet. It's like, all right, it's time for you to go eat dinner. And then you've been talking about all this lovely food that you make. I want to actually go back though to food because I love talking about food. What's your favorite meal to eat?
Dinner, because I love my protein. I love a nice thick steak.
Yes.
But
do you own a sous vide, or have you ever sous vide anything?
I haven't, and my Instant Pot does have a sous vide like kind of function.
Yeah,
but I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, we're sous videing a brisket right now for 48 hours, so I'm like excited about that. But man, the steak's like butter when you do a steak in there. Ooh, and then you just put it out on the grill, get those char marks on it.
Yeah. I've got a Traeger. I love my grill. I like to smoke and I love to grill.
Yeah, the smoking thing is something that I think would really set the brisket off. But yeah, that's awesome. So before we go, just anything else that you really enjoy doing that we haven't touched on? Because I know you're, like you said, a jack of all trades. You do all kinds of stuff. And I know we hit on almost everything. But is there anything else that's really near and dear to your heart that you really enjoy?
I've always liked to design and build. So I've built my she shed, out back. I've built raised garden beds. I built a pergola this year. I've got one more to build in March. I just like to design and build things. And whether it's for me, I've built some furniture for inside the house and outside the house. I've got a pretty nice workshop. If I could do woodworking, I think when I retire, I just want to do like really nice woodworking projects.
Oh yeah, that would be super dope. There's a guy across the street and he's always doing woodworking projects in his garage. It's like, that's a fun hobby, it sounds like.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, to be able to conceptualize and come up with a design and then build something that will stand the test of time. It's pretty cool.
Build something that will stand the test of time, just like Katie's dynasty team. So with that, can you go ahead and just, I know we touched on everything and I'm going to touch on it again, but where are you at? What do you do? How can people find you, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay, so on Twitter, I'm at ff_Skyler399. I also have a YouTube channel, Rewolf399, and I've got some tips for MFL creating, especially if you're in a Devy league, you're a commissioner. Sometimes getting into the settings are really tough. You don't do them but once a year. So some tricks on dispersal drafts and some Devy placeholders and tips and things like that. And if anybody has any suggestions, hit me up on Twitter and I'll add in my spare time. I'll add another video on how to find certain features in MFL, but I think that it's been very helpful to a lot of people. Also, Under the Helmet podcast every Wednesday on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. And follow me on Twitter and you'll see me retweet the Off the Rails podcast. That's not an every Friday, but it's a mostly every Friday.
Cool. Give you something to look forward to on Friday besides payday and the weekend.
Yeah, he typically doesn't get it edited and out until like the next week.
Well, you know what? Still super dope. I need to check that out. I have not checked that out yet, but I definitely will now that you've brought it up. It sounds really cool. I really appreciate you coming on, Katie. Like, couldn't ask for a better guest. I really appreciate it. And I know a lot of people are going to get a lot of good tips and tricks from you, so I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I was excited when I saw that you were inviting me.